Hello, my friends. Here we are. Welcome to week 8. This is creating the structure. So today's going to be a little different. I'm going to be a little honest with you. A lot of shit has been coming through. Like your boy has been deep into the void. And honestly, just doing my best to hang on for dear life of what has been coming through. I'm going to do my best here to blend some different elements together. So I still want to touch on week 8 and the theme of week 8 to keep this current train rolling. And at the same time, also give you a little bit of a feeler of what is coming through and what to expect. It's funny because I'll remind you, like, as I'm going and teaching this process, I am living this process. And so it has been really interesting and even shocking at times to see how these different things are lining up with the different seasons and the different cycles, which we'll get a little bit deeper into that next week, which is week 9, lesson 9, allowing the flow. Or this week is creating the structure, but it's all in line because basically, we have built this framework now. We have built this foundation now, and so now we want to essentially lock everything in. And the more I engage in this process, the more the visual of a channel or banks of a river continues to come in, because essentially what we have built so far is a channel, is the banks to your own river of life to help to facilitate this flow. Because remember, as much as we do things and as much as having this life map allows you to do more than you ever even thought of imaginable, it's not about the doing, it is about the being. And I want that to be a continual thread and a continual reminder here. So it might be a little all over the place, but what is essentially coming through is, which I knew this from the beginning, but as I've experienced this, it's like what I thought was maybe going to be a few years down the line then turns into, oh, that's going to be a couple months. And it's like, oh, no, actually, that's today. That's right now. It's coming through right now. And another thing, too, is, in line with my own key processes, in line with the system and the life map itself, my own key process is this design time and really being the visionary and developing all of these different things and putting all these things together. So a lot of the work that I do, like, in essence, what I've come to discover is my real job is to go into the void, is to peel behind the veil and kind of go into these meditative spaces, where these contemplative spaces where I hold an intention. And for me, it's literally it's magic. And the life map, by the way, the life stands for living in full expression. MAP is an acronym for Magic Alchemy Planner. So for me, this process of magic, and really the concept of magic in general, when you study like white magic and what that actually is, and I'm a very newbie at this, so take that with a grain of salt. But for me, what it has been is being able to hold an intention and create a structure to be able to hold that intention, which is where these key processes come in, creating this container to hold an intention long enough for it to be able to manifest. And so a lot of the work that I do is holding an intention and then opening myself up to see what comes through. And more and more and more and more, which is really what this whole process is all about, and what it leads towards when you get to kind of the upper levels, which again, I am still discovering what that even means, is all these different areas. So your different life types that you have discovered for yourself, they start to come together. So at first, you have these different spheres of influence, these different life types for yourself, and they might be a little separate. You've got maybe some music over here, you've got some training over here, you've got some gardening over here, and they're all part of your life, so they are integrated in that way. But they're still a little separate. There's not clear connections of how these things come together. But as you pour energy into those spheres of influence, they grow. What you focus on grows. What you pour energy into grows. And as they grow, they start to overlap. And you start to see the connection points here. And then as it keeps growing, as you get to these higher levels, it just turns into one thing. And right now, that is currently the process that I am in, is where all of these different elements are just unifying in one main channel, which for me is ceremony. And so that's where these different elements of the music, with the teachings, with the story, with the exercise, with the training, like all of these things come together into one unified whole. And what that means for the progression of this program is these lessons are actually, they're going to be held live as ceremony, okay, which is going to be the blending of the music, the story, like all of these different components. And it's all leading into the life games. Okay. So everything that we are doing as part of this is all different levels of the life games. The life games is the foundation, and actually what has been coming through, which I had a little inkling of this when this whole kind of journey started to unfold, but now it's like right in my face, is I'm designing like a board game that is encapsulating all of these different things, that it's something that it encompasses all the different principles but can be played like a standard board game, and then allowing that to be the foundation for the life manual, which is like how to play the game of life, like the board game, which is a representation of your own life, because it all contains these themes, just like the hero's journey, like the journey that we're on right now, this 12-step journey is all related on the archetypal, the mythical hero's journey. And so within the game itself, it is, again, it's all based upon these foundational archetypes. And I've been doing a lot of work with the gene keys. And so what I've been doing with the gene keys is going through a process of allowing the gene keys to infuse themselves with the different steps of the journey. So essentially, each lesson, each step of the way is a fractal component of the whole. And it's like it's a basket of the whole, because even within the gene keys, if you study the gene keys, which obviously they're an integral part of this, so we'll get deeper and deeper into them. But even within the gene keys, any one gene key is a fractal of the whole. It contains the essence of the whole. And so the same thing is true with each one of these lessons. It contains the essence of the whole. It's just a slightly different filter, a slightly different lens. And then it's cyclical. So you're in level, this is level 1 right now. And so the level 1 is this 12-week program, and then that opens up the door to level 2, and that opens up the door to level 3, and then it goes up to level 4. So level 1, it was called athlete, but level 1 now is called taking the call. It's take the call. It's just like you're initiating the journey. And the main requirement to complete level 1 is the creation of your life map, which is what we're in the process of creating right now, as well as, and this is another thing that's been coming through, as well as accumulating 1,000 points. So there's going to be a point system that is going to be implemented that is going to allow you to get points based on the completion of certain tasks. And so essentially, showing up to ceremony is, right now I have it as scored as 100 points. These are subject to change, obviously. So showing up to ceremony is a certain amount of points. Showing up to the team program, because how the programming is going to look is, now I'm starting to infuse all of the lessons and everything with the programming, so that you kind of have everything all in one place through the Train Heroic app, or I don't think we'll change it, but through the Train Heroic app, you'll be able to input, so like your daily accountability. So there'll be a process for daily accountability, and you'll get, I have it at 5 points for daily accountability. And then there's weekly integration sessions. So we'll do the weekly ceremony, which is the lesson in itself, of the entirety, which is an episode of the story. And then we'll have an integration session for the lesson. And so showing up to weekly integration, which is more of a being able to free flow and kind of connect with one another and share our stories and share our experiences, what you would imagine an integration session to be. That's a certain amount of points. And then going to the team workouts is a certain amount of points. So basically, you have these different things that you can accumulate points for. and you need to pass level one. You have to accumulate a certain 1,000 points, and you have to complete your life map. And you got to start playing the game because remember, this is all leading into the game. So the life games, there's 9 different life attributes. So there's power, grace, service, novelty, coordination, communication, attraction, flexibility, and endurance. And each one of those, they have physical, mental, or emotional emphasis, but they can all be expressed physically, mentally, or emotionally. Okay. So there's certain tests for each one of those life attributes, which, if you're following the programming, it's all aligned with that. So even the way like I said, even the way the programming is done is all moving into it's playing the game of life. Okay. Which is going to be encapsulated in like an actual board game, which I'm imagining will be the basis for some kind of a video game or some kind of more virtual reality kind of scenario where you can actually play out these different situations in your life and see the results of your actions. What happens if I develop my strength or my power to this capacity, but I don't develop my coordination? Or vice versa, what happens if I really focus on my coordination? What does that look like in my life? Kind of like a simulator kind of thing. And then you can actually do it in real life and basically kind of have some training, like again, like a flight simulator or something like that. So that's like the main stuff that is coming through. And again, what that means for you is, we're going to finish this, what we started here with this spring cohort. It might be a little bit more free flowy, or I might even have some more pieces put into place as we continue these last several weeks here. But basically, things are going to be transitioning to this point system, to the ceremony, and ultimately everything transitioning into the life games, which for me is also helping me to develop the manual. Because again, it's taking all of these different elements, like the music, like the story, like the lessons and the teachings and the sharing, and like all these different things, and blending it all together. And that's what ultimately this is a product of. Okay, which maybe can be an inspiration for what is coming through for you. And you can maybe get an inkling of where this actually may start to head when you really start to tap in. Because, like I don't remember if I said this here or not, but, I'm in deep in the void. And one of at first it's just getting comfortable in the void because the void's very scary. As you can imagine it. It's the abyss. That's what I think that's lesson 6, episode 6, facing the unknown. The void is facing the unknown. Stepping into the abyss is very scary. But then once you start to get comfortable in there and you allow yourself just a container to be in that, because that's one of the things, especially when you're first starting this journey, is you might not know what to do. You might, have feel this emptiness in your life because you started to eliminate things and identify things that aren't important, and so now you've eliminated that, but you're still not very sure on what actually is the most important stuff. And so, again, you may have some empty space. Or what do you know? You may have some space in your life. And that's the beginning of it, where just getting comfortable and embracing the void, embracing the space in your life. And then you start to get comfortable in that darkness. You start to realize that what seems empty is actually very, very pregnant with possibility, infinite possibility. And then the challenge becomes, well, holy shit, there's all this possibility. How do I hone in on what is the possibility, what is the potential to realize here and now, to have this experience, to have a relationship with? Okay. And so that's kind of where I find myself at now, where it's like, okay, there's all this shit coming through. And so even being able to have a little bit of a valve system on there, which I think I do pretty well with, is, learning when to turn things off and when to just blast it wide open. And again, that's a lot of the work that I do, is creating the space where I can blast it wide open, and then also having these other spaces where it's intentionally like, all right, we need to close this shit off. We don't need all that right now. It's time to just focus on the here and now, and like, here's the work right here. So, well, just in time. Just in time. So yeah, so that's like a lot of what is coming through right now. So as far as this lesson 8 is concerned, creating the structure. So originally, in what we'll stick with for right now, because we're still in this flow, creating the structure is all about, now that we have this foundation, it's establishing, getting really clear on our values for ourselves. And I like to use the 4 doctor model by Paul Chek that he came up with. So you have Dr. Happy, Dr. Quiet, Dr. Diet, Dr. Movement. So basically, each one of these is a pillar. It's like a leg on a chair, where, and as Paul Chek says, your yes has no value until you learn to say no. But if you don't know what to say no to unless you have established these values for yourself. So, what are your values around your nutrition? What kinds of food are you choosing to eat? And again, all of this ties back to the key processes, and it ties back to the ultimate vision, because it's all lining up to that. Am I eating foods that are supportive of my ultimate dream? So it's like, food quality, but also even outside of food, because Dr. Diet, it's also like information you may be consuming, different content, or just, all kinds of different influences that you may be surrounding yourself, even like different relationships, different people. And again, it's creating values around that. Because once you have these values set for yourself, and you've had enough discipline to maintain them long enough to become this natural process for you, then paradoxically, you can start to let things off a little bit. You can start to let go. But a lot of times, we do this in reverse, where we don't have clear values and we just kind of let go. And then we find ourselves in situations where, we're just running around in circles, wondering why we keep finding ourselves in the same place. And so that's Dr. Diet. So then Dr. Quiet, what are your values around your sleep, around the time that you're just taking to be with yourself? And, we talked about the void, and allowing yourself space to be in the space of life, and not feeling like you just constantly have to, fill all the gaps with just meaningless stuff. And again, it's just values, like what is actually meaningful to you? What is actually practical to you? And having values around that. So Dr. Quiet, again, what time are you going to bed? What time are you choosing to wake up? When are you engaging in your own introspective personal time for yourself? Recovery from training or whatever kind of physical activity you were doing. And then you have Dr. Movement. So what are your values around the kinds of exercise that you're doing? How many days a week are you training? Are you working out? How many days and how long are you working in? So more restorative kind of movement as well, whether that's stretching, whether that's like work in exercises like Paul Chek teaches, but also just like the Dr. Diet, where your consumption of information and just external stimuli. Same thing with Dr. Movement. What is your movement of thoughts? What are your trains of thoughts? What kind of patterns do you find yourself in? That's also related to Dr. Movement. And again, the first step is just becoming aware of all of these different things, which kind of ties back into Dr. Quiet, just creating space to open yourself up to the awareness of what's going on. So that way you can start to see where the movement is happening in your life and be more conscious of the values. And again, at first, and this is why, this lesson is creating the structure, because at first it is some work. Like it does take a little bit, or sometimes a lot of bit, of discipline to orient yourself in the right path. Because we've talked about the groove before. If your groove has been set in one direction, it's very easy to just keep going down that path because the groove is already laid down. And again, if that's the path that you feel like is heading where you want to be, and again, that's getting clear on where do you actually want to go, then yes, you've got a good groove there. Like play that music, keep going down that path over and over again. But a lot of times those grooves aren't really set by us. Those grooves are just conditioning and habituated behavior that isn't very dream affirmative. And so to get out of one groove and to start a new groove can take a lot of effort and energy up front, which is why it's important to have these simple practices in place, like eating quality food, drinking good water, enough water, getting sleep, so you got the vitality to actually make these shifts in your life. But you got to create a new groove. But the cool thing, just as easy as it is for your current groove, you can make a new groove, and that can become just as easy, if not easier, because now you're building momentum and you're moving towards your ultimate vision. And when you find yourself in the right groove, because it's just like every day, it seems like you just continue to pick up momentum and continue to pick up momentum. And in the gene keys, this is related to the ninth gene key, creating these grooves in your life. And essentially, when you find yourself in the right grooves that you've been able to consciously create through the channel of your values, then it's like the whole energy of the universe starts to get behind you and starts to propel you forward. Because you're moving in your dream affirmative direction. Okay. And then lastly, we've got Dr. Happy, which is really in Paul Chek's system, it's the chief physician. It's like, why are you doing what you're doing? And one of the easiest questions that you can ask for yourself related to Dr. Happy is, how's that working for me? Because the one of my favorite quotes is Laird Hamilton. The truth is what works. So it's like, regardless of all the stories you tell yourself, like how's it working for you? And again, a lot of that is related to Dr. Happy, because we have a choice to change and create a new groove and lead ourselves more in what is happy making for us and what is sustainably happy making for us. Because sometimes we do things that bring us temporary pleasure in the moment, but then long term it actually does the opposite, which again, it just goes back to being clear on what your values actually are. And again, even with that, there still is time when you've clarified these things for yourself. There is space for those momentary pleasures or whatever that may be. It's just you have values surrounding that. You're not just reenacting the same shit over and over and over again. Okay. So the main assignment, the main thing for this lesson is to look at these 4 values. So again, Dr. Happy, Dr. Quiet, Dr. Diet, Dr. Movement. And you can just do this on a sheet of paper, and I'm in the process of kind of getting more templates and things built out for the life manual. But basically, just on a piece of paper, just what are my values around Dr. Happy? What are my values around Dr. Diet? All these 4 different doctors. And then once you have that, then you can look at your week as a whole. Because remember, the week, like we talked about last week, the week is really the main block of time where the majority of the most important stuff happens. It's like the kind of core cycle of your life is this weekly rhythm. And so you can look at your week as a whole, and then you can start to structure out, okay, when am I exercising? What days, what times does that look like? And when you're doing this exercise too, like obviously, yes, you might already have, prior obligations and responsibilities, like things you're already committed to, but you want to kind of find the blend here of, what's my ideal situation for myself? Remember, all the way back to lesson 1, expanding possibility. The possibility exists, just giving yourself permission to even see it and become aware of it first and foremost. So what does my ideal situation look like, as well as being realistic of, okay, here's where I'm currently at. Here's what I know would actually be feasible. Because obviously you don't want to get so idealistic up front to where it's not feasible. And so then you just don't actually do it. But at the same time, you don't want to just limit yourself to your current circumstances and not allow yourself to move towards that specified ideal. So again, break your week, do a little chart of a full week, and then where is Dr. Movement included? Again, what times am I exercising? What times am I working in versus working out? What days is that happening? How long is that happening? You can kind of like block out different times. And then Dr. Quiet, when am I going to bed? When am I waking up? When is my spiritual practice time I'm just taking for myself? Dr. Happy, when am I creating the space to just do things that are enjoyable to me, regardless of the outcome? And then the cool thing is, because we've gone through this process already, you can relate all these to the key processes. So you can maybe see, for instance, with the Dr. Happy, like training for me is related to Dr. Happy, which is also related to Dr. Movement. So you might even find some of your key processes are already touching on a lot of these different things. So it's not like, oh, here's more stuff I got to do. Because we've already gone through this foundational process with the life map, it should start to clarify things more and just help you to specify, okay, these key processes are related to these doctors, and this is when I'm choosing to do these. And you're just kind of getting more of a framework for your ideal situation. And again, you're creating a new groove here. So it is going to take some work up front to establish a new groove. But once you establish a new groove, it becomes easier and easier and easier and easier the more you travel down that path. Okay. So then, yeah, obviously you'll finish that up with Dr. Diet. So, when am I cooking? When am I, what days are ideal for me to go get my food, or what times? Do I want to go to the store every day? Do I want to go to the store, only twice a week? What does that look like for me? And, when am I choosing to meal prep? Am I going to do that every day? Am I, going to do it like once on Sunday for the whole week? Am I going to do it multiple times a week? What does that look like for me? So things around Dr. Diet. And then again, that also has to do with information. So that might also include like studying time. When am I choosing to consume information, and what kinds of information am I choosing to consume? And then talked about Dr. Movement, Dr. Happy. I think we covered Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet. Yeah. So you've got all your 4 doctors there. So we're going to create some structure around those 4 doctors, establish some values for yourself, clarify your values for yourself, and then create the groove, and then allow the harmony to unfold. Because like I said, which starts to get into next week, once you do the work to create this structure for yourself, it actually starts to open up more and more and more flow, because you create these channels for yourself to where things become more and more automatic, to where you can actually start to, in a sense, lay off the values. Like, I don't need to necessarily worry about what times and what days I'm training, because there's such a good groove there now that I know it's going to happen. The same thing with the, Dr. Diet and Dr. Happy. It's like, I know these things are going to happen, and I don't necessarily need to focus so much on how it's going to happen, because I trust that the groove is there. And I trust that me just naturally following my own innate instincts and intuition is going to lead me to where I need to go. Because again, that's ultimately, as you'll see more and more with these last several weeks here, that's ultimately where things are heading, where it's like, okay, we built this structure. Now just let it all go, and now just flow, and now just be you, which opens up a new possibility, which then starts the cycle all over again. So that is it, my friends. I would invite you, well, obviously, Taylor, you hopped on here late. So I shared a lot of what is coming through moving into the future in the beginning of this. So maybe give that a listen and kind of see what is unfolding, how the game is unfolding, and how all these things are getting all tied together, and what that'll look like moving into the next cohort, and so on and so forth. But that's what I got for you today. So any questions or anything? But if not, we will conclude this ceremony. Thanks. All right, my friends. Blessings. I love you. See you soon. Peace.